Did you hear what I was playing, Lane?
I do not think it polite to listen, sir.
I'm sorry for that, for your sake. I don't play accurately. Anyone can play accurately, but I play with a wonderful expression. As far as the piano is concerned, sentiment is my forte. I keep science for life.
Yes, sir.
Now, speaking of the science of life, Lane, you got the cucumber sandwiches you got for Aunt Augusta?
Yes, sir.
By the way, Lane, I see from your book that on Thursday night when Lord Shoreman and Mr. Worthing were dining with me, 8 bottles of champagne were entered as having been consumed.
8 bottles and a pint.
Why is it that at a bachelor's establishment the servants invariably drink the champagne? I ask merely for information.
I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine, sir. In married households, wine is rarely of a first-rate brand.
Good heavens, is marriage so demoralizing as that?
I do believe it is a very pleasant state, sir. I've had very little experience of it myself. I've only been married once. And that was due to a misunderstanding between me and a young person.
So I don't much care about your family life, Lane.
It is not very interesting, sir. I rarely think of it myself.
Very natural, Lane, I'm sure. But that'll do.
Yes, sir.
Lane's views on marriage seem rather lax, really. If the lower classes don't set us a good example, what on earth is the use of them? They seem to me, as a class, to have absolutely no sense of moral responsibility.
Mr. Earnest Worthing.
Ernest, how are you, my dear Ernest? What brings you to town?
Oh, pleasure, pleasure. What else should bring one anywhere? Eating as usual, I see.
Yes, I believe it is customary in good society to take some slight refreshment at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since last Thursday?
In the country.
What on earth do you do there?
When one is in the town, one entertains oneself. When one is in the country, one entertains other people. It is excessively boring.
And who are these people you entertain?
Oh, neighbors.
Got nice neighbors in your part of Shropshire?
Oh, perfectly horrid. Never speak to one of them.
Oh, immensely, you must amuse them. By the way, Shropshire is your county, is it not?
Shropshire? What? Oh, yes, hello. Why these cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance and one so young? Who is coming to tea?
Oh, merely Aunt Augusta and Gwendolyn.
How perfectly delightful.
Yes, that's all very well and good, but I'm afraid Aunt Augusta won't quite approve of your being here.
And why is that?
Well, my dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolyn is perfectly disgraceful. It's almost as bad as the way Gwendolyn flirts with you.
I am in love with Gwendolyn. I've come up to town expressly to propose to her.
Oh, I thought you said you come up for pleasure. I call that business.
How utterly unromantic you are.
My dear fellow, I don't see anything romantic at all in proposing. It's very romantic to be in love, but there's nothing romantic about a definite proposal. Why, one may be accepted, one usually is, I believe, and then the excitement is all over. No, the very essence of romance is uncertainty. If I get married, I'll certainly try to forget the fact. Don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. They're ordered specially for Aunt Augusta.
Well, you've been eating them all this time.
That's quite a different matter. She is my aunt. Have some bread and butter. Bread and butter is for Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn is devoted to bread and butter.
Oh, and very good bread and butter it is, too.
Well, my dear fellow, you need not eat as if you're going to eat at all. You act as if you were married to her already. You're not married to her already, and I don't think you ever will be.
And why do you say that?
In the first place, girls never marry the men they flirt with. Girls just don't think it right.
Oh, that is nonsense.
It isn't. It's the great truth. It accounts for the extraordinary number of bachelors one sees all over the place. And in the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
My dear fellow, Gwendolyn is my first cousin. And before I allow you to marry her, you'll have to clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? I don't know a Cecily. I've never met a Cecily in my life. What do you mean, Algernon, by Cecily?
Bring me the cigarette case Mr. Worthing left in the smoking room last time he dined here.
You mean to say you've had my cigarette case all this time? I've been writing frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. I very nearly put up a large reward for it.
I wish you would have. I have to be more than usually hard up.
Well, there's no use offering a reward now that the thing is found.
I think it rather mean of you, Ernest, I must say. However, it makes no difference, for now that I look at the inscription inside, I find the thing isn't yours after all.
Well, of course it's mine. You've seen me with it 100 times. And besides, you have no right whatsoever to read the inside of a private cigarette case. It's a very ungentlemanly thing to do, to read the inside of a private cigarette case.
Yes, but this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case is a present from someone of the name of Cecily. And you said you didn't know anyone of that name.
Well, if you want to know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt?
Yes, a charming old lady she is too. Lives at Tunbridge Wells. Just give it back to me, ouch.
But why does she call herself Little Cecily, if she is your aunt and lives at Tunbridge Wells? Ahem. From Little Cecily with her fondest love.
My dear fellow, what is there in that? Some aunts are tall. Some aunts are not tall. Surely that is a matter an aunt may be allowed to decide for herself. Just give it back to me.
Yes, but why does your aunt call you her uncle? Ahem. From Little Cecily with her fondest love to her dear Uncle Jack. There is no objection, I admit, to an aunt being a small aunt. But why an aunt, no matter what her size may be, should call her own nephew her uncle, I can't quite make out. And besides, your name isn't Jack at all, it's Ernest.
It isn't Ernest, it's Jack.
You have always told me it was Ernest. I've introduced you to everyone as Ernest. You answer to the name of Ernest. You would as if your name was Ernest. You are quite possibly the most earnest-looking person I've ever met in my life. It's perfectly absurd. You're saying your name isn't Ernest. It's on all your cards. Here is one of them. Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany. I'll keep this as proof that your name is Ernest if you ever try to deny it to me, or to Gwendolyn, or to anyone else.
Well, the fact is, I go by Ernest in town and Jack in the country, and the cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes, but that does not account for the fact that your small Aunt Cecily, who lives at Tunbridge Wells, calls you her dear uncle. Come on, old boy, much better have the thing out at once.
My dear fellow, you speak as though you were a dentist. You are not a dentist, and it is very vulgar to speak as though one is a dentist if one is not a dentist. It produces a false impression.
Well, that is exactly what dentists always do. Now go on and tell me the whole story. I may mention that I have always suspected you of being a confirmed and secret Bunburyist.
Well, first produce my cigarette case.
Here it is. Now produce your explanation, and pray make it improbable.
My dear fellow, there's nothing improbable about it. You see, Mr. Thomas Cardew made me, in his will, the guardian of his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. When one becomes a guardian of any sort, one has to adopt a very high moral tone on all subjects. It is one's duty to do so. And while this high moral tone cannot be said to conduce very well to one's health, or to one's happiness, I have invented a fantastically useful younger brother by the name of Ernest, so that I may run up to town as often as I please. There is the truth, pure and simple.
Oh, the truth isn't rarely pure and never simple. Modern life would be far too tedious if it were either. And modern literature a complete impossibility.
That would not be an entirely bad thing.
Literary criticism isn't your forte, my dear fellow. Don't try it. Better leave that to people who haven't been at university. They do it so well in the daily papers. What you really are is a Bunburyist. I was quite right in saying you're a Bunburyist. You are one of the most advanced Bunburyists I know.
Bunburyist, you keep using that term Bunburyist. I am... What does that mean, Algernon?
You have invented a very useful younger brother called Ernest, in order that you may be able to go down to town as often as you please. I have invented an invaluable permanent invalid friend called Bunbury, in order that I may be able to go up to the country as often as I choose. For Bunbury's extraordinarily bad health, for instance, I wouldn't be able to dine with you at Willis's, for I'd really been engaged to Aunt Augusta for more than a month.
I haven't asked you to dine with me at Willis's.
Oh, I know that. You're absurdly careless about giving out invitations. It's very foolish of you, Ernest, I must say.
You had much better dine with your Aunt Augusta.
I haven't the smallest intention of doing so. In the first place, I dine there on Monday night, and once a week is quite enough to dine with one's own relations. In the second place, every time I do dine there, I am treated as a member of the family, and set down either with no woman at all, or two. And in the third place, I know perfectly well whom she will place me next to tonight. She will place me next to Mary Farquhar, who always flirts with her own husband across the dinner table. It's not very pleasant. Indeed, it is not even decent. That's the sort of thing that's enormously on the uprise. The number of women in London who flirt with their own husbands is perfectly scandalous. It looks so bad. It's like washing one's own clean linen in public. Besides, now that I know you're a bumbriist, I naturally want to talk with you about bumbring. I want to tell you the rules.
I am no such thing. Ere the week is out, I think I will have gotten rid of Earnest if Gwendolen accepts me. In fact, I think I will have gotten rid of him in any case. You see, Cecily is quite rather interested in him, and it is much a bore. Yes, I think I will have gotten rid of Earnest.
Well, nothing will induce me to part with bumbring. That must be Aunt Augusta. Only relatives and creditors ever ring in that Wagnerian manner. Now, if I manage to get her out of the way for 10 minutes so that you can have an opportunity of proposing to Gwendolen, may I dine with you at Willis's?
Yes, I suppose so, if you want.
But you must be serious about it. I hate people who aren't serious about meals. It's so shallow of them.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, dear Algernon. I hope you're behaving very well.
Well, I'm feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
That's not quite the same thing, in fact, that you rarely go together.
Oh, dear me, you are smart.
I'm always smart, aren't I, Mr. Worthing?
Oh, you're quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Well, I hope I'm not that. That would leave no room for development, and I intend to develop in many directions.
I apologize if we are a little late, Algernon, but I was obliged to call in dear Lady Carberry. I hadn't been there since her poor husband's death. I never saw a woman so altered. She looks quite 20 years younger. And now I will have a cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta. Good heavens, Lane, why are there no cucumber sandwiches? I ordered them specially.
There were no cucumbers at the market, sir.
No cucumbers?
No, sir. Not even for ready money.
That will do, Lane. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm greatly distressed, Aunt Augusta, about there being no cucumbers in the market, not even for ready money.
It makes no matter, Algernon. I had some crumpets with Lady Carberry, who seems to me to be living entirely for pleasure now.
I hear her hair has turned quite gold from grief.
It certainly has changed color. What cause, I, of course, cannot say. Oh, I have such a treat for you tonight, Algernon. I'm going to send you down with Mary Farquhar. She's such a lovely woman, and so attentive to her husband. It's delightful to watch them.
Yes, Aunt Augusta, I'm afraid I shall have to give up the pleasure of dining with you after all.
I should hope not, Algernon. It would put my entire table completely out. Your uncle would have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he is accustomed to that.
Yes, Aunt Augusta, it is a great bore, and I need hardly say terrible disappointment. But, well, the fact is that I've just received a telegram to say that my poor friend Bunbury is dreadfully ill again. They seem to think I should be with him.
It is strange. This Bunbury of yours seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
This poor Bunbury's a dreadful invalid.
Well, I think that it is high time that he made up his mind whether he was going to live or die. This shilly-shallying with the matter is absurd. Nor do I, in any way, approve of the modern sympathy with invalids. I find it morbid. Illness of any kind is hardly a thing to be encouraged. Health is the primary duty of life. I am always telling that to your poor uncle. Not that he ever takes much notice. But as far as any improvements on his ailments goes, I should be much obliged if you would ask Mr. Bunbury, from me, to kindly not have a relapse next Saturday, for I rely on you to arrange my music for me. It is my last reception of the season, and one wants something that will encourage conversation, since it is my last one of the season, and everyone has already said anything that they had to say, which, in most cases, was probably not much.
I'll speak to Bunbury, Aunt Augusta, if he's still conscious. And I think I can promise you he'll be right by Saturday. The music, you see, is a great difficulty. If one plays good music, people don't listen. If one plays bad music, people don't talk. But I'll run over the program that I've drawn up if you'll kindly come in the next room with me.
Thank you, Algernon. The program will be delightful, I'm sure, after a few expurgations. Oh, French songs it cannot possibly allow. People always seem to think that they're improper, and look shocked, which is vulgar, or laugh, which is worse. But German sounds to me a thoroughly respectable language, and indeed, I believe it is so. Gwendolen, you will accompany me?
Certainly, Mamma.
Charming weather it's been, Miss Fairfax.
Pray don't talk to me of the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I feel quite sure that they mean something else. And that makes me so nervous.
Well, I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I am never wrong.
Well, I would like to be allowed to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence to ask
Well,
her...
I would certainly advise you to do so. Mamma has a way of coming back suddenly into a room that I'd often have to talk to her about.
Gwendolen, ever since I met you, I have admired you more than any girl I have ever met since I met you.
Yes, I'm quite aware of the fact. And at public, at any rate, I often wish you had been more demonstrative. Before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. The fact is mentioned constantly in the more expensive monthly magazines and has reached the provincial pulpits, I am told. And my ideal has always been to love someone of the name of Earnest.
You really love me, Gwendolyn?
Passionately.
Darling, you do not know how happy you've made me.
My own Earnest.
But you don't mean to say you couldn't love me if my name were not Earnest?
But your name is Earnest.
Oh, well, yes, I know that, but considering it were something else.
Why, Earnest is a divine name. It has a music all its own.
Personally, darling, to speak quite candidly, I'm not much attached to the name of Earnest. I think there are other much nicer names, like Jack, for instance.
Jack? There's very little music in the name Jack, if any at all. I've known more than one Jack, and they all, without exception, have been more than usually plain. Besides, Jack is a notorious domesticity for John, and I pity any woman who's married to a man called John. She would probably never know the entrancing pleasure of a single moment's solitude. The only really safe name is Earnest.
Gwendolyn, I must be christened at once. We must be married at once.
Married? Mr. Worthing.
Well, surely you know that I love you, and you led me to believe, Miss Fairfax, that you are not entirely indifferent to me.
Why, I adore you, but you have not proposed to me yet. Nothing has been said about marriage at all. The subject has not even been touched on.
Well, may I propose to you now?
I think it would be an admirable opportunity, and to spare you any possible disappointment, I feel it only fair to tell you quite frankly beforehand that I'm fully determined to accept you.
Gwendolyn.
Yes, have you got something to say to me?
You know what I've got to say to you.
But you don't say it.
Gwendolyn, will you marry me?
Why, certainly I will, darling. How long you've been about it. I'm afraid you have very little practice on how to propose.
Gwendolyn, you're the only girl I've ever loved in my life.
Why, yes, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does. All my girlfriends tell me so. What blue eyes you have, Ernest. They're quite blue. I hope you will always look at me, especially when other people are present.
Mr. Worthing! Rise, sir, from this semi-recumbent posture. It is most indecorous.
Mamma, I must beg you to retire. This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing is not quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
I am engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Pardon me, you are nothing of the kind. When you do become engaged, your father or I will inform you of the fact. An engagement should come on a girl as a surprise, pleasant or unpleasant as the case may be. It is hardly a matter which she should be allowed to arrange for herself. And now, I have a few questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. While I am making these inquiries, you, Gwendolyn, will wait for me below in the carriage.
Mamma!
The carriage, Gwendolyn.
Yes, Mamma.
Gwendolyn, the carriage.
Yes, Mamma.
You may take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell. I prefer standing.
I feel bound to tell you that you are not on my list of eligible young men, though I have the same list as the dear Duchess of Bolton has. We work together, in fact. However, I'm quite ready to enter your name, should your answers be what a really affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes. I must admit I do smoke.
I'm glad to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many idle men in London as it is. How old are you?
29.
Very good age to be married at. I've always been of the opinion that if a man wishes to get married, he should know either everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
I am glad to hear it. I do not approve of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate exotic fruit. Touch it, and the bloom is gone. The whole theory of modern education is radically unsound. Fortunately, in England at any rate, it produces absolutely no effect whatsoever. It would prove a real threat to the upper class if it did. There would likely be uprisings in Grosvenor Square. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or in investments?
In investments, chiefly.
Ah, yes, I'm glad to hear it. Between the duties expected of one during one's life and the duties exacted of one after one's death, land ceases to either be a pleasure or a profit. And it gives one position and prevents one from keeping it up. That's all that can be said about land.
I have a country house with some land, of course, attached to it, about 1,500 acres out in the country, but I don't rely on that for my primary source of income. In fact, as far as I can make out, only the poachers make anything off of it.
A country house. How many bedrooms? Well, that can all be cleared up later. You have a townhouse, I presume? A girl with a simple, unspoiled nature like Gwendolyn could hardly be expected to reside in the country.
Yes, I own a house on Belgrave Square, but it is let by the year to Lady Bloxham. I can get it back at 6 months' notice at any time I wish.
Lady Bloxham, I don't know her.
Oh, she's a small lady, very advanced in years. She doesn't go about very much.
Well, yes, nowadays that is no judge of respectability of character. What number in Belgrave Square?
149.
Ah, the unfashionable side. I knew there was something. Well, that could easily be altered.
The fashion or the side?
Both, if necessary, I presume. What are your politics?
I suppose I have none. I am a liberal, a unionist.
They count as Tories. They dine with us, or come in the evening at any rate. And now on to minor matters. Are both your parents living?
No, Lady Bracknell, I have lost both of my parents.
Both. To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, may be regarded as misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father? He was evidently a man of some importance.
Well, I said I had lost my parents, Lady Bracknell. It would be closer to the truth to say that my parents had lost me. I was found.
Found?
Yes, Lady Bracknell, the late Mr. Thomas Cardew, a gentleman of very kind and charitable disposition, found me and gave me the name of Worthing because he had a ticket to Worthing in his pocket. It is a seaside resort in Sussex.
And where did this kindly gentleman with the seaside resort ticket find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, Lady Bracknell. It was an ordinary handbag, a large brown leather handbag with the handles to it.
And in what locality did this Mr. James or Thomas Cardew find this handbag?
In the cloakroom of Victoria Station. It was given to him in mistake for his own.
The cloakroom at Victoria Station?
Yes. The Brighton line?
The line is immaterial, Mr. Worthing. I confess that I am somewhat bewildered by what you have just told me. To be born, or at any rate, bred in a handbag, whether it had handles or not, seems to me to display an utter contempt for the natural decencies of family life that remind one of the worst excesses of the French Revolution, and I presume you know what that unfortunate movement led to. Furthermore, a cloakroom at a railway station could be used to conceal a social indiscretion. Probably has been used for that purpose before now, but it could hardly be seen as an assured basis for a recognized position in society.
Well, what would you advise me to do, Lady Bracknell? I need hardly tell you I would do anything to ensure Gwendolyn's happiness.
I would strongly advise you, Mr. Worthing, to try to acquire at least one parent of either sex before the season is quite out.
I don't know how I can quite do that, Lady Bracknell. I have the handbag in my dressing room at home, and I can produce it at any instant. And I really think that ought to satisfy you, Lady Bracknell.
Me, Mr. Worthing? What has any of it got to do with me? You can hardly imagine that Lord Bracknell and I would allow our only daughter, a girl brought up with the unbound hair, to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with the handbag. Good morning, Mr. Worthing!
Good morning! Good heavens, Algernon! Don't play that ghastly tune. My, how idiotic you are.
Didn't it go off right on, boy? You don't mean to say she refused you. I know it's a way she had. She was always refusing people. I think it most ill-natured of her.
No, Gwendolyn is right as a trivet. As far as she is concerned, we are all but married. Her mother, on the other hand, is quite a different matter. I've never met such a gorgon in my life. I don't know what a gorgon is, but I am sure that she is a monster without being a myth, and that is rather unfair. I'm sorry, Algernon. I shouldn't speak of your parents that way before you.
Oh, my dear boy, I love hearing my relations' views. It's the only thing that allows me to put up with them all. Relations are simply a tedious pack of people who haven't the remotest knowledge of how to live, nor the smallest instinct of when to die.
Algernon, you don't think there's any chance of Gwendolyn becoming like her mother in about 150 years? Do you?
My dear boy, all women become like their mothers. That is their tragedy. No man does, and that is his. By the way, did you tell Gwendolyn the truth about your being Earnest in the town and Jack in the country?
Oh, my dear fellow, the truth isn't the sort of thing one tells to a sweet, intelligent girl like Gwendolyn. My what fanciful ideas you have on how to behave to a woman.
The only way to behave to a woman is to make love to her if she's pretty and to someone else if she's plain.
Oh, that is nonsense.
But what about your brother? What about the profligate Earnest?
I will have gotten rid of Ernest before the week is out. I'll say he died of apoplexy. Lots of people die of apoplexy, do they not?
Yes, but it's hereditary, my dear fellow. It's the sort of thing that runs in families. Much better say it was a severe chill.
And a severe chill does not run in families?
Of course it doesn't.
All right, that settles it. I'll say Ernest died of a severe chill in Paris. That gets rid of him.
But I thought you said that Miss Cardew was a little too much interested in your poor brother Ernest. Won't you feel his loss a great deal?
Oh, Cecily is not a silly, romantic girl. She goes on long walks, has a capital appetite, and pays no attention whatsoever to her lessons.
I would rather like to meet Cecily.
And I will take great care that you never do. She is excessively pretty, and she is only just 18.
Well, did you tell Gwendolyn that you have an excessively pretty ward who is only just 18?
Oh, my dear fellow, one doesn't blurt these things out to people. I am sure that Gwendolyn and Cecily will be the best of friends. Within half an hour of meeting each other, they will be calling each other sister.
Women only call each other that when they've called each other lots of other things first. Now, my dear fellow, we really must go and dress. Do you know it's nearly 7?
Oh, it's always nearly 7.
Well, I'm hungry.
I never knew you when you weren't.
What should we do after dinner? Go to the theater?
Oh, no, I hate listening.
Well, let's go to the club.
No, I hate talking.
All right, well, we might trot around by the Empire at about 10.
No, I hate looking at things. It's all so silly.
Well, what shall we do?
Nothing.
Oh, it's awfully hard work doing nothing. However, I don't mind work when there's no definite object of any kind.
Miss Fairfax.
Gwendolyn, upon my word.
Algy, kindly turn your back. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
Really, Gwendolyn, I don't think I can allow this at all.
Ernest, we may never be married. From the expression of Mamma's face, I fear we never shall. Few parents nowadays pay any regard to what their children have to say to them. The old-fashioned respect for the young is fast dying out. Whatever influence I had of Mamma, I lost at the age of 3. Though I may marry someone else, and marry often, nothing she can possibly do can prevent my eternal devotion to you.
My own one.
The story of your romantic origin, as related by Mamma with many unpleasing comments, has naturally stirred the deeper fibers of my nature. Your Christian name has an irresistible fascination. The simplicity of your character makes you exquisitely incomprehensible to me. Your address in the Albany I have. What is your address in the country?
The Manor House, Woolton, Hertfordshire.
There is good postal service, I suppose. It may be necessary to do something desperate. That, of course, will require serious consideration. I will communicate with you daily.
My own one.
How long do you remain in town?
Till Monday.
Good. Algy, you may turn around now.
Thanks, I've turned around already.
Also, you may ring the bell.
You will let me see you to your carriage, Miss Fairfax?
Certainly, darling.
Thank you, Dean. Lane, I'll see Miss Fairfax out.
Yes, sir.
Glass of sherry, Lane.
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow, Lane, I'm going Bunbury. I shall probably not be back till Monday afternoon. You've set up my dress clothes, my smoking jacket, and all the Bunbury suits.
Yes, sir.
And I hope tomorrow will be a fine day, Lane.
It never is, sir.
You are a perfect pessimist, aren't you, Lane?
I do my best to give satisfaction.
There's a sensible, intellectual girl, the only girl I have ever loved in my life. And what has you so amused?
Oh, I'm just a little worried about poor Bunbury, that's all.
If you don't watch out, this Bunbury figure is going to get you into quite a scrape someday.
Cecily, surely such a utilitarian occupation as the watering of flowers is rather Moulton's duty than yours, especially at a moment when intellectual pleasures await you. Your German grammar is on the table. Pray open it at page 15. We'll repeat yesterday's lesson.
But I don't like German. It isn't at all a becoming language. I know perfectly well that I look quite plain after my German lesson.
Child, you know how anxious your guardian is that you should improve yourself in every way. He laid particular stress on your German as he was leaving for town yesterday. Indeed, he always lays stress on your German when he's leaving for town.
Uncle Jack is so very serious. Sometimes he is so serious I think he cannot be quite well.
Your guardian enjoys the best of health. His gravity of demeanor is especially to be commended in one so comparatively young as he is. I know no one who has a higher sense of duty and responsibility.
I suppose that is why he often looks a little bored when we three are together.
Cecily, Mr. Worthing has many troubles in his life. Idle merriment and triviality would be out of place in his conversation. You must remember his constant anxiety over that unfortunate young man, his brother.
Oh, I wish Uncle Jack would allow that unfortunate young man, his brother, to come down here sometime. We might have a good influence over him, Miss Prism. I know you certainly would. You know German and geology and things of that sort influence man very much.
I do not think that even I could produce any effect on a character that, according to his own brother's admission, is irretrievably weak and vacillating. Indeed, I don't think I would desire to reclaim him. I'm not in favor of this modern mania of turning bad people into good people at a moment's notice. As a man sows, so let him reap. You must put away your diary, Cecily. I really don't see why you should keep a diary at all.
Well, I keep a diary in order to enter the wonderful secrets of my life. If I didn't write them down, I should probably forget all about them.
Memory, my dear Cecily, is the diary that we all carry about with us.
Yes, but it usually chronicles things that have never happened and couldn't possibly have happened. I believe that memory is responsible for nearly all of the 3-volume novels.
Do not speak slightingly of the 3-volume novel. I wrote one myself in earlier days.
Oh, did you really, Miss Prism? Oh, how wonderfully clever you are. I do hope it did not end happily. I don't much like novels that end happily. They depress me so much.
The good ended happily, and the bad unhappily. That is what fiction means.
Oh, I suppose so, but it seems so very unfair. And was your novel ever published?
Alas, no. The manuscript was unfortunately abandoned. I use the word in the sense of lost or mislaid. Now, to your work, child. These speculations are profitless.
But I see dear Dr. Chasuble coming up to the garden.
Dr. Chasuble, this is indeed a pleasure.
And how are we today, Miss Prism? You are, I hope, well?
Miss Prism has just been complaining of a slight headache. I think it would do her ever so much good to go on a short stroll with you in the park, Dr. Chasuble.
Cecily, I haven't said anything about a headache.
No, dear Miss Prism, but I felt instinctively that you had a headache. Indeed, I was thinking about that and not about my German lesson when the rector came in.
You are, I hope, unattentive, Cecily?
Oh, I'm afraid I am.
How strange. Had I been fortunate enough to be Miss Prism's pupil, I would hang upon her lips. I spoke metaphorically. My metaphor taken from bees. Yes. Mr. Worthing, I presume, has not returned yet?
We do not expect him until Monday afternoon.
Yes, he's not one of those whose sole aim is for pleasure like one of those, like his unfortunate young brother seems to be. Well, I shall no longer disturb Egeria and her pupil.
Egeria? My name is Letitia, Doctor.
Yes, an allusion merely to pagan authors. I shall no doubt see you both at evensong.
I think I will have a stroll with you, Doctor. I find I have a headache after all, and a walk might do it good.
With pleasure, Miss Prism, with pleasure. We might go as far as the schools and back.
That would be delightful. Cecily, you will read your political economy in my absence. The chapter in the fall, the rupee, you may omit. It is somewhat too sensational. Even these metallic problems have their melodramatic side.
Horrid political economy, horrid geography, horrid German.
A Mr. Ernest Worthing has called to see Mr. Worthing on very important business.
Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany West. Uncle Jack's brother, did you tell him Mr. Worthing was in town?
He seemed very disappointed. I told him that you and Miss Prism were in the garden. He seemed very anxious to speak with you.
Oh, tell the gentleman to come out here. And I suppose you'd better talk to the maid about setting room for him.
Yes, miss.
I've never met any really wicked person before. I feel rather frightened. I'm so afraid he'll look just like everyone else. He does.
You are my little cousin Cecily, I'm sure.
I'm not little. In fact, I believe I am more than usually tall for my age. But I am your cousin Cecily. You I see from your card are Uncle Jack's brother, my cousin Ernest, my wicked cousin Ernest.
Oh, well, I'm not really wicked at all, Cousin Cecily. You mustn't think that I'm wicked.
Well, if you're not wicked, then you've certainly been deceiving us all in a most inexcusable manner. I hope that you've not been leading a double life, pretending to be bad and being really good all the time. That would be hypocrisy.
Oh, well, I have been rather reckless.
I'm glad to hear it.
In fact, now that you mention the subject, I have been very bad in my own small way.
I don't think you should be so proud of that fact, though I imagine it must have been very pleasant.
It's much pleasanter being here with you.
I can't understand how you're here at all. Uncle Jack won't be back until Monday afternoon.
Oh, that is a great disappointment. I'm obliged to go up the first train Monday morning. I have a business appointment that I'm anxious to miss.
Couldn't you miss it anywhere but in London?
Oh, no, the appointment is in London.
I understand, of course, the importance of not keeping a business engagement if one wants to retain any sense of the beauty in life, but I still think you better wait till Uncle Jack arrives. I know he wants to talk to you about your emigrating.
About my what?
You're emigrating. He's gone up to buy your outfit.
I certainly wouldn't let Jack buy my outfit. He has no taste in neckties at all.
I don't think you will require neckties. Uncle Jack is sending you to Australia.
Australia? I'd sooner die.
Well, Uncle Jack said at dinner on Wednesday night that you'd have to choose between this world, the next world, and Australia.
Oh, well. The accounts I've received of the next world and Australia are not particularly encouraging. This world is good enough for me.
Yes, but are you good enough for it?
I'm afraid I'm not that. That is why I want you to reform me. You might make that your mission, if you don't mind, Cousin Cecily.
I'm afraid I've no time this afternoon.
Oh, well, do you mind my reforming myself this afternoon?
That's rather quixotic of you, but I think you should try.
I will. I feel better already.
You're looking a little worse.
Well, that's because I'm hungry.
Oh, how thoughtless of me. I should have remembered that when one is going to lead an entirely new life, one requires regular and wholesome meals. Won't you come in?
Thank you. Might I have a buttonhole first? I never have any appetite unless I have a buttonhole first.
A madder gentleman?
No, I'd sooner have a pink rose.
Why?
Because you are like a pink rose, Cousin Cecily.
I don't think it can be right for you to say such things to me. Miss Prism never talks to me like that.
Well, Miss Prism is a short-sighted old lady. You're the prettiest girl I've ever seen.
Well, Miss Prism says that all good looks are a snare.
Well, they're a snare every sensible man would love to be caught in.
Oh, I don't think I should care to catch a sensible man. I should know what to talk to him about.
You're too much alone, Mr. Chasuble. You should get married. A misanthrope, I can understand. A woman-throp, never.
Believe me, I do not deserve so neologistic a phrase. The precepts and the practice of the primitive church were distinctly against matrimony.
That is obviously why the primitive church has not lasted up until the present day. And you do not seem to realize, dear doctor, that by persistently remaining single, a man converts himself into a permanent public temptation. Men should be more careful. This very celibacy leads weaker vessels astray.
But isn't man not equally attractive when married?
No married man is ever attractive except to his wife.
And yes, so I've been told not even to her.
That depends on the intellectual sympathies of the woman. Maturity can always be depended upon. Ripeness can be trusted. Young women are green. I spoke horticulturally. My metaphor was drawn from fruits. Where is Cecily?
Perhaps she followed us to the schools.
Mr. Worthing!
Mr. Worthing? This garb of woe, I hope, does not betoken some terrible calamity.
My brother.
More shameful debts and extravagance.
Still leading that life of pleasure?
Dead.
Your brother Ernest dead?
Quite dead.
What a lesson for him. I trust he will profit by it.
Were you with them in the end?
No, he died abroad, in Paris, in fact. I had a telegram from the general manager of the hotel last night.
Was the cause of death mentioned?
A severe chill, it seems.
As a man sows, so let him reap.
Charity, Miss Prism, charity. Nobody is perfect. I myself am particularly susceptible to drafts. Will the interment take place here?
No, he gave an express desire to be buried in Paris.
In Paris? That hardly points to any serious state of mind at the last. You would no doubt like me to make some slight allusion to this terrible domestic affliction next Sunday, would you? My sermon on the meaning of the manna of the wilderness can be adapted to almost any situation, joyful or, as in present case, distressing. I have preached it at harvest ceremonies, christenings, days of humiliations, and festival days.
Christenings? You mentioned christenings. I mean, I am sure you know how to christen. I mean, you are continually christening, are you not?
It is, I regret to say, one of the rector's most constant duties in the parish. I've often spoken to the poorer classes on the subject. They don't seem to know what thrift is.
Is there any particular infant you are fond of? Your brother, I believe, was unmarried, was he not?
He was.
People who live entirely for pleasure usually are.
Okay.
But this is not for any infant, dear doctor. I myself would like to be christened.
Have you not been christened already?
If I have, I cannot recall a thing about it.
Have you any doubts about the subject?
I certainly intend to have, but if the entire matter is all right with you, I mean, if you do not think I am too old.
Oh, no. The immersion and sprinkling of adults is perfectly canonical tradition.
Immersion?
You need no apprehensions, my dear boy. Sprinkling is all that is required. What time would you like the ceremony to take place?
Well, I thought I might come around 5.
Verily. Yes, in fact, I have 2 cases at that time. A case of twins. Poor Jenkins, Hakata, the most hard-working man.
Well, I wouldn't much like to be christened with other babies. It would be quite childish. Might I come round about 5:30?
Admirably. Our weather is so changeable. Well, I must no longer stay here. I hope you two need not too much bowed down by grief. What seem to be us bitter trials are but blessings in disguise.
This seems to me to be a blessing of an extremely obvious kind.
Uncle Jack, I am pleased to see you back, but what horrid clothes you've got on. Do go and change them.
Cecily.
My child.
Uncle Jack, what is wrong? You look as if you'd had a toothache, and I was such a surprise for you. Who do you think is in the dining room? Your brother!
My brother?
Your brother, Ernest! He arrived not half an hour ago.
I don't have a brother.
Uncle Jack, don't say that. However badly he may have behaved to you in the past, he is still your brother. You couldn't be so heartless as to disown him. I'll tell him to come outside, and you will shake hands with him, won't you, Uncle Jack?
After we'd all been resigned to his loss, his sudden return seems peculiarly distressing.
This is joyful news.
My brother, alive, is standing in my dining room. I don't know what this all means.
Brother John, I've come down from town specifically to tell you that I am very sorry for all the trouble I've given you, and that I fully intend to lead a better life in the future.
Uncle Jack, you're not going to refuse your own brother's hand.
Nothing will induce me to take his hand. I find his presence here entirely absurd, and he knows fully well why.
Uncle Jack, do be nice. There's some good in everyone. Ernest has just been telling me about his poor invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury, whom he goes to visit so often. Surely there must be much good in someone who is kind to an invalid and leaves the pleasures of London to sit beside a bed of pain.
Oh, he's been talking about Bunbury, has he?
Oh, yes. He's told me all about poor Mr. Bunbury and his terrible state of health.
I won't have him talking about Bunbury here. It's quite enough to drive one perfectly frantic.
The faults were, of course, all on my side, but I must say, I find Brother John's coldness to be peculiarly painful. I expected a more enthusiastic welcome, especially considering it's the first time I've ever been here.
Uncle Jack, if you don't shake hands with Ernest, I will never forgive you.
Never forgive me?
Never.
All right, fine, but this is the last time I shall ever do it.
This is so joyful. Have you ever seen such a perfect reconciliation? I suggest we leave the 2 brothers alone together.
Cecily, you will come with us.
Certainly, Miss Prism. My little task of reconciliation is over.
You've done a wonderful thing today, dear child.
I feel very happy.
You young scoundrel, Algie, you have no right to Bunbury here.
I've put Mr. Ernest Worthing's things in the room next to yours, sir. I suppose that is all right.
His things?
Yes, sir. Mr. Ernest Worthing's luggage.
Merriman, call the dog cart. Mr. Ernest has been called back to town on very urgent business.
Yes, sir.
What a fearful liar you are, Jack. I've not been called back to town at all.
Yes, you have.
I haven't heard anyone call me.
Your duty as a gentleman calls you back.
My duty as a gentleman has never interfered with my pleasures in the smallest degree.
Well, I can quite understand that.
Well, Cecily is a darling.
You are not to speak of Miss Cardew like that. I am her guardian, and I don't like it.
Well, I don't like your clothes. You look perfectly ridiculous in them. Why on earth don't you go up and change? It's perfectly childish to be in deep mourning for a man who is really staying in your house for a whole week as a guest. I call it grotesque.
You will not be staying in my house as a guest or anything else for a week. You need to be gone by the 4:05 train.
I certainly will not leave as long as you're in mourning. If I were in mourning, you would stay with me, I suppose. I would think it very unkind if you didn't.
Well, will you go if I change my clothes?
Yes, if you are not too long. I never saw anyone take so long to change with such little result.
Well, it's better than always being overdressed as you are.
If I am occasionally a little overdressed, I make up for it by always being immensely overeducated.
Your vanity is ridiculous, your conduct an outrage, and your presence in my garden utterly absurd. However, you have got to catch the 4:05 train, and I do wish you a pleasant journey back to town. This bun breeding, as you call it, has not been a great success for you.
I think it has been a great success. I'm in love with Cecily, and that is everything. But I must see her before I go, and make arrangements for another Bunbury. Ah, there she is.
Oh, I merely came out to water the roses. I thought you were with Uncle Jack.
He's gone to order the dog cart for me.
Is he going to take you for a nice drive?
He's going to send me away.
Then we have to part.
I'm afraid so. It is a very painful parting.
It is always painful to part from anyone whom one has known for a very brief space of time. The absence of old friends one can endure with equanimity. But even momentary separation from anyone to whom one has just been introduced is almost unbearable.
Thank you, Cecily.
The dog cart is here.
You can wait, Merriman, for 5 minutes.
Yes, miss.
I hope, Cecily, I shall not offend you if I state quite frankly and openly that, well, you seem to me to be in every way the visible personification of absolute perfection.
I think your frankness does you great credit, Ernest. In fact, if you allow me, I will copy your remarks into my diary.
Do you really keep a diary? I'd give anything to look at it, may I?
Certainly not. You see, it is simply a very young girl's record of her own thoughts and impressions, and consequently meant for publication. When it appears in volume form, I hope you'll order a copy. Pray, Ernest, don't stop. I delight in taking down from dictation. I agree to absolute perfection. You can go on. I'm quite ready for more. Don't cough, Ernest. When one is dictating, one must speak fluently and not cough. Besides, I didn't know how to spell a cough.
Cecily, ever since I first looked upon your wonderful and incomparable beauty, I have dared to love you. Wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
I don't think you should tell me you love me wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't seem to make much sense, does it?
Cecily.
The dog cart is here.
Tell it to come around next week at the same hour.
Yes, sir.
Oh, well, Uncle Jack would be very annoyed if he knew you were staying on till next week at the same hour.
I don't care about Jack anymore. I don't care for anyone in the whole world but you. I love you, Cecily. You will marry me, won't you?
Oh, you silly boy, of course. Why, we've been engaged for the past 3 months.
For the past 3 months?
Yes, it will be exactly 3 months on Thursday.
How on earth did we become engaged?
Well, ever since Uncle Jack first told us that he had a younger brother who is very wicked and bad, you, of course, formed the chief topic of conversation between myself and Miss Prism. And, of course, a man who is much talked about is always very attractive. One feels there must be something in him after all. I dare say it was foolish of me, but I fell in love with you, Earnest.
Darling, and when was the engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of February last, worn out by your utter ignorance of my existence, I determined to settle the matter one way or another. And after a long struggle with myself, I accepted you under this dear old tree here. The next day, I bought this little ring in your name, and this bangle with the true lover's knot I promised you always to wear.
Did I get you this? It's very pretty, isn't it?
Yes, you've wonderful taste, Ernest. It's the excuse I've always given for you leading such a bad life. Oh, and here is the box in which I keep all your dear letters.
My letters? But my own sweet Cecily, I've never written you any letters.
Oh, you need hardly remind me of that, Ernest. I remember only too well that I was forced to write your letters for you. I wrote 3 times a week and sometimes oftener.
Oh, do let me read them, Cecily.
I couldn't possibly. They would make you far too conceited. The 3 you wrote me after I had broken off the engagement were so beautiful and so badly spelled that even now I can hardly read them without crying a little.
Wait, was our engagement ever broken off?
Of course it was. On the 22nd of last March. You can see the entry if you like. Today I broke off my engagement with Earnest. I feel it is better to do so.
But
The
why-
weather still continues charming.
Why on earth would you break it off? What had I done? I did nothing at all. Cecily, I'm very much hurt indeed to hear that you broke it off, especially when the weather was so charming.
Well, it could hardly have been a very serious engagement if it hadn't been broken off at least once. But I forgave you ere the week was out.
You're a perfect angel, Cecily.
You dear romantic boy. I hope your hair curls naturally. Does it?
Yes, dear, with a little help from others.
I'm so glad.
Never break it off again, Cecily.
Oh, I don't think I could now that I've actually met you. And besides, there's the question of your name.
Yes, of course.
You mustn't laugh at me, darling, but it has always been a girlish dream of mine to love someone whose name was Earnest. There's something in that name that seems to inspire absolute confidence. I pity any poor married woman whose husband is not called Earnest.
Do you mean to say that you couldn't love me if I had another name, though?
But what name?
Any name you like. Algernon, for instance.
I don't like the name of Algernon.
But, my own sweet little darling, I don't see why you should object to the name of Algernon. It's not at all a bad name, and in fact, it's rather an aristocratic name. But seriously, Cecily, couldn't you love me if my name was Algie?
I might admire you, Ernest, and I might respect you, but I'm afraid I would not be able to give you my undivided attention.
Your rector here is, I suppose, thoroughly experienced in all the rites, practices, and ceremonies of the church?
Oh, yes. Dr. Chasuble is a very learned man. He's never written a single book, so you can imagine how much he knows.
I see. I must see him at once for a most important christening.
Oh.
I mean, a business, most important business. I shan't be away more than half an hour.
Well, considering that we've been engaged since February the 14th and I only just met you today, I think it rather hard that you should leave me for so long a period as half an hour. Couldn't you make it 20 minutes?
I'll be back in no time.
What an impetuous boy he is. I like his hair so much. I must enter his proposal into my diary.
A Miss Fairfax has called to see Mr. Worthing on very important business, Miss Fairfax states.
Isn't Mr. Worthing in his library?
I saw him go to the rectory some time ago.
Well, then tell the lady to come out here. Mr. Worthing is sure to be back soon. And you can bring tea.
Yes, miss.
Miss Fairfax must be one of the many good elderly women associated with Uncle Jack and some philanthropic work in London.
Miss Fairfax.
Oh, pray let me introduce myself to you. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew, what a very sweet name. I feel we would be great friends. I like you already more than I can say.
Oh, how nice of you to like me after we've known each other for such a comparatively short period of time. Won't you sit down?
I may call you Cecily, may I not?
Oh, with pleasure.
And you will always call me Gwendolyn, won't you?
If you would like.
That is all quite settled, is it not?
I should hope so.
Perhaps this might be a favorable opportunity of my mentioning who I am. My father is Lord Bracknell. You have heard of Papa, I suppose?
No, I don't believe I have.
Outside the family circle, Papa, I'm glad to say, is entirely unknown. It is quite as it should be. The house seems to be the proper sphere for the man. Cecily, Mamma, whose views on education are remarkably strict, has brought me up to be quite short-sighted. Do you mind my looking at you through my glasses?
Oh, not at all, Gwendolyn. I'm very fond of being looked at.
You are here on a short visit, I suppose.
Oh, no, I live here.
Your mother, no doubt, or some other female relative of advanced years resides here also?
Oh, no, I have no mother, nor in fact any relations.
Indeed.
My dear guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prism, has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I'm Mr. Worthing's ward.
Mr. Worthing never mentioned to me that he had a ward. How secretive of him. He was more interesting hourly. I'm not sure, however, that this news inspires me with feelings of unmixed delight. I like you very much, Cecily. I've liked you ever since I met you. But now that I know you're Mr. Worthing's ward, I feel bound to wish to state that you are, well, a little older than you seem to be, and not quite so very alluring in appearance. In fact, if I may speak candidly...
Oh, pray do. I believe that when anyone has anything unpleasant to say, one must always be quite candid.
Well, to speak with pure candor, Cecily, I wish you were full 42, and more than usually plain for your age. Ernest has a strong, upright nature. He is the very soul of truth and dignity. Disloyalty would be as impossible to him as deception. But to even men of the possible noblest moral character are still extremely susceptible to the physical charms of others. Modern, no less than ancient history, supplies us with many of the most painful examples of what I refer to. Without it, history would be quite unreadable.
Excuse me, Gwendolyn, but did you say Ernest?
Yes.
Well, it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is my guardian. It is his brother, his elder brother.
Ernest never mentioned to me that he had a brother.
I'm sorry to say they have not been on good terms for a very long time.
Ah, that accounts for it. And now that you mention it, I have not heard any man mention his brother. The subject seems a distasteful one to most men. Cecily, you have lifted a load from my mind. I was growing almost anxious. It would have been a terrible thing if a cloud had come across a friendship like ours, would it not? Now, you are quite sure it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is your guardian?
Oh, quite sure. In fact, I am going to be his.
I beg your pardon.
I see no reason why I should make a secret of it to you, dear Gwendolen, for our little country newspaper is sure to chronicle the fact next week. Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
There must be some slight error, for Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married. The announcement will appear on the Morning Post on Saturday at the latest.
There must be some mistake, for Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
There must be some slight error, for Mr. Ernest Worthing proposed to me yesterday afternoon at exactly 5:30. If you care to verify the incident, pray do so. I never travel without my diary. I feel that one must always have something sensational to read on the train. I'm so sorry, dear Cecily, if this causes you any possible disappointment, but I fear that I have the prior claim.
Oh, it would distress me more than I could tell you, dear Gwendolen, if it caused you any mental or physical anguish, but I feel bound to point out that since Ernest proposed to you, he has clearly changed his mind.
If my poor boy has been entrapped into any foolish promise, I've considered my duty to rescue him at once and with a firm hand.
Whatever entanglement my dear boy may have gotten himself into, I will never reproach him with it after we are married.
Do you allude to me, Miss Cardew, as an entanglement? You are presumptuous. On an occasion of this kind, it becomes more than a moral duty to speak one's mind. It becomes a pleasure.
Do you suggest, Miss Fairfax, that I entrapped Ernest into an engagement? How dare you! This is no time for wearing the shallow mask of manners. When I see a spade, I call it a spade.
Well, I'm glad to say that I've never seen a spade. It is obvious that our social spirits have been widely different.
May I set the tea out as usual?
Yes, as usual.
Many interesting walks in the vicinity, Miss Cardew.
Oh, yes, a great many. From one of the hills quite near one can see 5 counties.
5 counties? I don't think I should like that. I hate crowds.
I suppose that's why you live in town?
Quite a well-kept garden this is, Miss Cardew.
Oh, I'm so glad you like it, Miss Fairfax.
I was unaware there were any flowers in the country.
Oh, flowers is common here, Miss Fairfax, as people are in London.
Quite frankly, I don't see how anybody can possibly reside in the country if anybody who is anybody does. The country always bores me to death.
That is what the newspapers call agricultural depression, is it not? I believe the aristocracy is suffering very much from it just at present. It is almost an epidemic amongst them, or so I've been told. May I offer you some tea?
Thank you. Detestable girl, but I require tea.
Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar is not fashionable anymore.
Cake or bread and butter?
Bread and butter, please. Cake is rarely seen at the finest houses nowadays.
And that to Miss Fairfax.
You have filled my tea with lumps of sugar. And though I most distinctly asked for bread and butter, you have given me cake. I am known for the gentleness of my disposition and the extraordinary sweetness of my nature, but I warn you, Miss Cardew, you may go too far.
To save my poor, innocent, trusting boy from the machinations of any other girl, there are no lengths to which I would not go.
From the moment I saw you, I distrusted you. I felt you were false and deceitful. My first impressions of people are invariably right.
Well, it seems to me, Miss Fairfax, that I am intruding on your valuable time. There are actually many calls of a similar character to make in the neighborhood.
Ernest! My own Ernest. A moment. May I ask you, are you engaged to be married to this young lady here?
To dear, sweet little Cecily? Of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I knew there must be some mistake. The gentleman whose arm is at present around your waist is not Mr. Ernest Worthing. This is my guardian, Mr. John Worthing.
I beg your pardon?
This is Uncle Jack.
Jack! Oh,
Here is Ernest. A moment, Ernest. May I ask you, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
To what? Good heavens, Gwendolen!
To good heavens, Gwendolen. I mean, to Gwendolen.
No, of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
I knew there must be some slight error, For the man who is at present embracing you is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrief.
Algernon Moncrief? Oh. Is your name really Algernon?
I cannot deny it.
Are you really called John?
I could deny it if I liked. I could deny anything if I liked, but no, the truth is my name is John, and I have been John for years.
A gross deception's been practiced on both of us. Oh, poor wounded Cecily. My sweet wronged Gwendolyn, you will call me sister, won't you?
Oh, there was just one question which I would like to be allowed to ask my guardian.
A wonderful idea. John, who is your brother Ernest? It seems to me that we are both engaged to be married to your brother Ernest. So it is a matter of some importance that we know where your brother Ernest is at present.
Gwendolyn, Cecily, it pains me very much to speak the truth to you. I'm quite inexperienced in the thing, and it is quite a painful position to find oneself in. But I can tell you candidly that I have no brother Ernest, and I have no intention of having a brother, not even of any kind.
No brother at all?
None.
Not even of any kind.
Not even of any kind.
It seems to me that we are not engaged to be married to anyone.
It is not a very pleasant position for a young girl to find herself in, is it?
Let us go into the house. They will hardly venture to follow after us there.
Certainly not. Men are so cowardly, aren't they?
I suppose this horrid situation is what you call bunburying?
Yes. Perfectly wonderful Bunbury was. The most wonderful Bunbury I'd ever had in my life.
Well, the only consolation I have in the whole of this wretched business is that your friend Bunbury is quite exploded, and you won't be able to run down to the country quite as much as you used to anymore.
Your brother seems a little off-color, doesn't he, dear Jack? You won't be able to run off to town quite so often as your wicked custom was. And not a bad thing, either.
As for your conduct toward Miss Cardew, I find your taking in a sweet, simple, innocent girl like that entirely inexcusable, to say nothing of the fact that she is my ward.
I can see no possible explanation for your deceiving a brilliant, thoroughly experienced young lady like Miss Fairfax. Say nothing of the fact that she is my cousin.
I wanted to marry Gwendolyn. I love her, and that is all.
I only wanted to be married to Cecily. I adore her.
And there is certainly no chance of you marrying Miss Cardew.
I don't see much likelihood of you, Jack, and Miss Fairfax being united.
And that is none of your business.
If it was my business, I wouldn't talk about it. It's very rude to talk about one's business. Only people like stockbrokers do that. And then merely only at dinner parties.
How you can sit there, calmly eating muffins in the whole of this wretched business, I can't quite make out.
I could hardly eat muffins in an agitated manner. Butter would probably get in my cuffs.
How you can eat muffins at all under the circumstances, I think is entirely heartless of you.
When I'm in trouble, eating is the only thing that consoles me. Indeed, when I am in really great trouble, as anyone who knows me intimately would tell you, I refuse everything except food and drink. At the present, I'm eating muffins because I am unhappy. And besides, I'm particularly fond of muffins.
We need not eat them all in that greedy manner.
I do wish you'd have tea cake. I don't like tea cake.
Good heavens. I suppose a man made his own muffins in his own garden.
You just said it was perfectly heartless to eat muffins.
I said it's perfectly heartless of you under the circumstances. It is an entirely different thing.
That may be, but the muffins are the same.
Algernon, I wish to goodness you would go.
You can't possibly ask me to go without having some dinner first. It's absurd. I never go without my dinner. No one ever does, except vegetarians. Besides, I've just made arrangements with Dr. Chasuble to be christened at 6:15 under the name Earnest.
My dear fellow, the sooner you give that up, the better. You see, I have been engaged with Dr. Chasuble since this morning to be christened at 5:30, and I will naturally take the name of Earnest. We can't both be named Ernest. That would be absurd. And besides, I have a right to be christened if I like. You have never been christened, or I have never been christened before. You, however, have.
Yes, but I haven't been christened for years.
Yes, but you have been christened.
Quite so. So I know my constitution can stand it. If you're not sure about your ever having been christened, I must say I think it rather dangerous you're going about doing it now. It might make you very unwell. You can hardly have forgotten that someone very close to you was very nearly carried off the other day in Paris by a severe chill.
Yes, but you said that wasn't hereditary.
It used to be, I know, but I dare say it is now. Science is always making wonderful improvements on things.
You are always talking nonsense. You never talk anything but nonsense.
Jack, you're at the muffins again. I wish you wouldn't. There are only 2 left.
But I hate tea cake.
Why on earth do you allow it to be served for your guests then? What ideas have you of hospitality?
Algernon, I have asked you to go, and I wish to goodness you would go.
I haven't quite finished my tea yet, and there's still 2 muffins left.
The fact that they did not fall us at once into the house as anyone else would have done seems to me to show that they have some sense of shame left. They've been eating muffins. That looks like repentance. They don't seem to notice us. Couldn't you cough? But I haven't a cough. They're looking at us. What effrontery. They're approaching. That's very forward of them. Let us preserve a dignified silence. Oh, certainly. This dignified silence seems to produce an unpleasant effect. A most distasteful one. But we will not be the first to speak. Oh, certainly not. Mr. Worthing. I have something very particular to ask you. Much depends on your reply.
Oh, Gwendolyn, your common sense is invaluable. Mr. Moncrief, kindly answer me the following question. Why did you pretend to be my guardian's brother?
In order that I might have an opportunity of meeting you.
Well, that certainly seems a satisfactory explanation, does it not?
Why, yes, dear, if you can believe him.
Oh, I don't. But that doesn't affect the wonderful beauty of his answer.
In matters of grave importance, style, not sincerity, is the vital thing. Mr. Worthing, what explanation can you offer to me for pretending to have a brother? Was it in order that you might come up to town as often as possible to see me?
Can you doubt it, Miss Fairfax?
Oh, I have the greatest doubts on the subject. But I intend to crush them. Their explanation seems to be not unsatisfactory. Mr. Worthing's especially had the stamp of truth upon it.
I'm more than content with what Mr. Moncrief said. His voice alone inspires me with absolute credulity.
So, you think we should forgive them?
Yes. I mean, no.
True, I had forgotten. There are principles at stake that one cannot surrender. Who should be the one to tell them? It is not a pleasant task.
Can we not both speak at the same time?
An excellent idea. I nearly always speak at the same time as other people. Will you take the time for me?
Oh, certainly.
Your Christian names are still an insuperable barrier. That is all.
Our Christian names, is that all? But we're going to be christened this afternoon.
For my sake, are you willing to do this horrible deed?
I am.
For my sake, are you willing to face this fearful ordeal?
I am.
Darling.
Lady Bracknell.
Oh, good heavens.
Gwendolyn, what is the meaning of this?
Merely, Mamma, that I'm engaged to be married to Mr. Worthing.
Come here. Sit down immediately. A prize served my daughter's sudden flight by her trusty maid, whose confidence I purchased by means of a small coin. I followed her at once by a luggage train. Her unhappy father is, I am glad to say, under the impression that she is attending a more than usually lengthy lecture at the university. I do not propose to undeceive him, as I have never undeceived him on any question. I would consider it wrong. But you will, of course, clearly understand that all communications between yourself and my daughter must cease immediately from this moment. On this point, as on all points, I am firm.
But I'm engaged to be married to Gwendolyn, Lady Bracknell.
Pardon me, but you are nothing of the kind, sir. And now as regards Algernon. Algernon,
Yes, Aunt Augusta?
may I ask if it is in this house that your invalid friend Mr. Bunbury resides?
Oh, Bunbury doesn't live here. Bunbury's somewhere else at present. In fact, Bunbury's dead.
Dead? When did Mr. Bunbury die? His death must have been extremely sudden.
Oh, Bunbury? Oh, I killed Bunbury this afternoon. I mean, poor Bunbury died this afternoon.
What did he die of?
Bunbury? He exploded.
Exploded? Was he the victim of a revolutionary outrage? I was not aware that Mr. Bunbury was interested in social legislation. If so, he is well punished for his morbidity.
My dear Aunt Augusta, I mean he was found out. The doctors found out that Bunbury could not live. That is what I mean. So Bunbury died.
His death... He seems to have had great confidence in the opinion of his physicians. I am glad, however, that he at last made up his mind to some definite course of action, and that he acted under proper medical advice. And now that we have got rid of this Mr. Bunbury, may I ask, Mr. Worthing, who is that young person whose hand my nephew Algernon is now holding in what seems to me a peculiarly unnecessary manner?
That lady is Miss Cecily Cardew, my ward.
I'm engaged to be married to Cecily.
I beg your pardon.
Mr. Moncrief and I are engaged to be married, Lady Bracknell.
I do not know if there is anything peculiarly exciting about the air in this particular part of Hertfordshire, but the number of engagements that go on here seems to me considerably above the proper average that statistics have laid down for our guidance. I think some preliminary inquiry on my part would not be entirely out of place. Mr. Worthing, is Miss Cardew at all connected with any of the larger railway stations in London? I merely desire information. Until yesterday, I had no idea that there were any families or persons whose origin was a terminus.
Miss Cardew is the granddaughter of the late Mr. Thomas Cardew of 149 Belgrave Square, Gervais Park, Dorking, Surrey, and the Sporran, Fifeshire, NB.
That sounds not unsatisfactory. Few addresses always inspires confidence, even in tradesmen. But what proof have I of their authenticity?
I have carefully preserved the court guides of that period. They are open to your inspection, Lady Bracknell.
I've known strange errors in that publication.
Not to worry. Miss Cardew's family solicitors are Masters Markby, and Markby.
Oh, Markby. A firm with the very highest position in their profession. Indeed, I am told that one of the Mr. Markbys is occasionally to be seen at dinner parties. So far, I am satisfied.
You will also be pleased to hear that I have in my possession records of Miss Cardew's birth, baptism, registration, confirmation, vaccination, and the measles, both the English and the German variety.
Ah, a life crowded with incident, I see, though perhaps too much excitement for a young girl. Gwendolen, let us go. It is time for our departure. Mr. Worthing, as a matter of form, I had better ask you if Miss Cardew has any small fortune.
Oh, only about 130,000 pounds in the funds.
Okay, a moment, Mr. Worthing. 130,000 pounds and in the funds. Miss Cardew seems to be a really attractive young lady now that I look at her. Come here, dear child. Yes. Your dress is sadly simple, and your hair looks as though nature would have left it, but we can soon alter all that. A thoroughly experienced French maid produces a really wonderful result in a very brief space of time. Indeed, I remember recommending one to young Lady Lansing, and after 3 months, her own husband did not know her.
And after 6 months, nobody knew her.
Kindly turn around, dear child. No, the side view is what I want? Yes. It is as I expected. There are distinct social possibilities in your profile. The 2 weak points in our age are its want of principle and its want of profile. The chin a little higher, dear? Yes. Style largely depends on how the chin is worn. They're worn very high just at present. Algernon?
Yes, Aunt Augusta?
There are distinct social possibilities in Miss Cardew's profile.
Cecily's the sweetest, dearest, prettiest girl I've ever seen. I don't care tuppence about her social possibilities.
Don't speak disrespectfully about society, Algernon. Only people who can't get into it do that. Dear child, you know, of course, that Algernon has nothing but his debts to depend upon, but I do not approve of mercenary marriages. When I married Lord Bracknell, I had no fortune of any kind, but I would never dream of allowing that to stand in my way. Well, I guess I must give my consent.
I am very sorry to interrupt you, Lady Bracknell, but I am Miss Cardew's guardian, and she cannot marry without my consent. That consent I absolutely decline to give.
Upon what grounds, may I ask? Algernon is an extremely, might I say, ostentatiously available young man. He has nothing, but he looks everything. What more can one desire?
The truth is, Lady Bracknell, I do not approve at all of Algernon's moral character. I suspect him of being untruthful.
Untruthful? My nephew Algernon? Impossible. He's an Oxonian.
I'm afraid there can be no doubt as to the matter, Lady Bracknell. You see, when I was gone this morning on an important question of romance in London, he obtained entrance into my house under the false pretense of being my brother. He then stayed to alienate the affections of my only ward. He then stayed to tea and devoured every single muffin. Fact is, I am not sure Algernon is a trustworthy person.
After careful consideration, I have decided to completely overlook my nephew's conduct towards you.
That is very kind of you, Lady Bracknell, but my own consent I absolutely decline to give.
Come here, dear child. How old are you?
Well, I'm really only 18, but I always admit to 20 at evening parties.
Well, you are quite right in making some slight alteration. A woman should never be quite accurate about her age. It looks so calculating. 18, but admitting to 20 at evening parties. Well, you will soon be of age and free from the restraints of tutelage, so I do not think that your guardian's consent is, after all, a matter of any great importance.
Again, I really do hate to interrupt you, Lady Bracknell, but as per the terms in her grandfather's will, Cecily does not come of age until she is 35 years old.
That does not seem to me to be a grave objection. London society is full of women of the very highest birth who have, of their own free decision, remained 35 for years. Lady Doubleton is an instance in point. To my knowledge, she has been 35 ever since she arrived at the age of 40, which was many years ago now. I do not see why Miss Cardew should not be even more attractive at the age you mentioned than she is now. There will be a large accumulation of property.
Algie, could you wait for me till I was 35?
Of course I could, Cecily. You know I could.
Yes, I felt it instinctively, but I couldn't wait all that time. I hate waiting even 5 minutes for anybody. It always makes me rather cross. I'm not punctual myself, but I do like punctuality in others, and waiting even to be married is out of the question.
What is to be done, Miss Cardew?
I don't know, Mr. Moncrief.
Mr. Worthing, as Miss Cardew states that she positively cannot wait until she is 35, a remark which I am bound to say gives thoughts of an impatient nature, I would beg of you to reconsider your decision.
But you see, Lady Bracknell, the matter is entirely in your own hands. The moment you consent to my marriage with Gwendolen, I will allow Miss Cardew to marry Mr. Moncrief.
You are quite aware that what you propose is out of the question.
Then a passionate celibacy is all that any of us can look forward to.
That is not the destiny that I propose for Gwendolen. Algernon can, of course, choose for himself. Come on, Gwendolen. The time arises for our departure. We've missed 5, if not 6 trains. To miss any more would expose us to comment on the platform.
Everything is quite ready for the christenings.
The christening, sir! Is that not somewhat premature?
Both of these gentlemen have expressed immediate desire for immediate baptism.
At their age, the idea is grotesque and irreligious. Algernon, I forbid you to be baptized. Lord Bracknell and I will not hear of such excesses.
So am I hearing that there will be no baptisms today?
I fear that as things are now, it would not be of much practical value to either of us, dear doctor.
You seem to savor the views of the Anabaptists. But your mood seems to be quite secular, so I shall leave you. Miss Prism has been waiting for me for the last, let's see, hour and a half.
Please, allow me to detain you for a moment. You mentioned a Miss Prism. Is this Miss Prism a female of repellent aspect, remotely connected with education?
Miss Prism is the most cultivated of ladies and the very picture of respectability.
Miss Prism has been for the last 3 years Miss Cardew's valued companion and esteemed governess.
Yes, it is obviously the same person. Well, in spite of what I hear of her, I must see her at once. Let her be sent for.
No need. She approaches. She is 9.
I was told you expected me in the vestry, dear Canon. I've been waiting for you there for an hour and 3/4.
Prism! Come here, Prism! Prism, where is that baby? 28 years ago, Prism, you left Lord Bracknell's house, number 104 Upper Grosvenor Street, in charge of a perambulator that contained a baby of the male sex. You never returned. 3 weeks later, due to the elaborate investigations of the Metropolitan Police, the perambulator was discovered at midnight, standing by itself in a remote corner of Bayswater. It contained the manuscript of a 3-volume novel of more than unusually revolting sentimentality. But the baby was not there. Prism, where is that baby?
I confess with shame, Lady Bracknell, that I do not know. I only wish I did. The plain facts of the case are these. On the morning of the day you mention, a day that is forever branded in my memory, I prepared as usual to take the baby out in its perambulator. I had also with me a rather large but capacious handbag in which I had intended to place the manuscript. of a work of fiction I had written during my few unoccupied hours. But in a moment of mental abstraction for which I can never forgive myself, I deposited the manuscript in the bassinet and placed the baby in the handbag.
Yes, Miss Prism, but where did you place this handbag that contained that infant?
Do not ask me, Mr. Worthing.
Miss Prism, I insist on knowing. It is a matter of great importance to me.
I left it in the cloakroom of one of the larger railway stations in London.
Yes, well, which railway station?
Victoria, the Brighton line.
Gwendolyn, will you wait here for me?
If you're not too long, I will wait for you here all my life.
What do you think this means, Lady Bracknell?
I can hardly even guess, Dr. Chasuble. I need hardly tell you that in families of high standing, strange coincidences are not supposed to happen. They're hardly considered a thing.
Uncle Jack seems strangely agitated.
Your guardian seems to have a very emotional nature.
I dislike this noise very much. It sounds as if he were having an argument. I dislike arguments of any kind. They're always vulgar and often convincing.
The suspense is terrible. I hope it will last.
Miss Prism, is this the handbag of which you speak? Please, examine it carefully before you reply. Much depends on your answer.
It certainly seems to be mine. Here is the injury received through the upsetting of a Gower Street omnibus in younger and happier days. And here's the stain on the lining caused by the explosion of a temperance beverage. The incident occurred at Leamington. Here on the locker, my initials. I'd forgotten that in an extravagant mood I'd had them placed there. Yes, the bag is undoubtedly mine. I'm delighted to have it so unexpectedly restored to me. It's been a great inconvenience, being without it all these years.
Miss Prism, more is restored to you than that handbag. I was the infant you placed in it.
You, Mr. Worthing?
Yes, mother!
Oh, Mr. Worthing, I am unmarried.
Unmarried? I do not deny that is a serious blow, but cannot repentance wipe out an act of folly? Who can cast the first stone against one who has suffered? Why ought there to be one law for men and another for women? Mother, I forgive you.
Oh, Mr. Worthing, there is some error. There is the lady who can tell you who you really are.
Lady Bracknell, I hate to seem inquisitive, but could you kindly inform me who I am?
I'm afraid that the news I have to give you will not altogether please you. You are the son of my late sister, Mrs. Moncrief, and, consequently, Algernon's elder brother.
Algernon's elder brother? So I knew I had a brother. I always said I had a brother. Cecily, how could you not believe me when I said that I had a brother? Dr. Chasuble, my unfortunate brother. Miss Prism, my unfortunate brother. Gwendolyn, my unfortunate brother. Algernon, you had better respect me a bit more from now on. You have never acted like a brother to me in all of your life.
Well, not till today, old boy. Although I must admit I was out of practice.
My own one, but what own are you? Since you have become a different person, what is your Christian name?
Oh, yes, I quite forgot the matter. I'm sure your decision on it is entirely irreversible.
I never change, except in my affections.
Oh, what a noble nature you have, Gwendolyn.
Lady Bracknell, at the time of my disappearance, had I yet been christened?
Every luxury that money could buy, including christening, had been lavished on you by your fond and doting parents.
So I was christened, that is settled, but what was my father's Christian name?
Well, being the eldest son, you were naturally christened after your father. But I cannot at the present moment recall what the general's Christian name was, though I have no doubt he had one. He was eccentric, I admit, but only in later years, and that was the result of marriage and indigestion and the Indian climate and other things of that sort.
Algernon, can you recall what our father's Christian name was?
My dear boy, we were hardly on speaking terms. He died before I was a year old.
Lady Bracknell, I am sure that his name would appear in the military listings of the time.
The general was essentially a man of peace, except in his domestic life. But I have no doubt that his name would appear in any of the military listings of the period.
The military lists of the last 50 years are here. These delightful records should have been my constant study. Here, M. Generals, Malum, Moxbum, Magley. What ghastly names do they have? Markby, Migsby, Mobbs, Moncrief, Lieutenant, 1840. Captain, Lieutenant Colonel, Colonel, General, 1869. Christian names? Earnest, John. So, my name really is Earnest. I mean, it naturally is Earnest, is it not?
Ah, yes, I remember now that the general's Christian name was Earnest. I knew I had some particular reason for disliking the name.
Ernest, I knew from the first that you could have no other name.
Gwendolyn, it is a terrible thing to find out that one has been telling nothing but the truth one's entire life. Can you forgive me?
I feel sure that I can forgive you, for I'm quite sure you will change.
Letitia.
Frederick, at last.
Cecily, at last.
Gwendolyn, at last.
My nephew, you seem to be displaying signs of triviality.
On the contrary, Lady Bracknell, I now understand for the first time in my life the vital importance of being earnest.